Hey everyone, this is Patrick, and it is time for another edition of Heavy Therapy. So I saw that there was this death metal bracket fight going around, and I was intrigued by it. I didn't want, haven't watched anybody's videos. I think I actually even saw it on Twitter, and I was just like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. I hope it works the way that I want it to work." So yeah, I'm gonna try to go through this death metal bracket fight. I presume there's 64 uh, different albums, 32 different matchups, and I'm going to crown a favorite out of the albums that were chosen by whoever made this. Whoever made this. So shout out to that person who made it. Maybe it's this Twitter logo right here at James. I'm not reading all that. That's a bad Twitter. That's a terrible Twitter handle. Uh, Shout out to whoever made this. So yeah, this should be fun. If you're watching this, that means that I think that it worked well enough for me to publish it. So let's have some fun here. So first matchup is Death and their album Leprosy, and then Possessed Seven Churches. Interesting matchup. Seven Churches came out in 1986. Leprosy came out in 1988, and there's an argument, there's a debate in the metal community about who put out the first death metal album. Was it Possessed with this very album, Seven Churches, or was it Death with their debut album, Scream Bloody Gore, which came out in 87? My position there is that Seven Churches is an amazing album. It's proto death, but there's a lot of genres going on, including some, Celtic Frost. There's some almost what we would seem as we would now understand as kind of that catchy metalcore at times. I know I said it. Heavy thrash, it's aggressive, like Creator. Um, Almost sounds like Chuck in places for sure. Um, Seven Churches is not a death metal. That's not the question. The question at hand for me is which album is better. Leprosy is not my favorite death metal. I'm sorry, Leprosy is not my favorite death album. Seven Churches is my favorite Possessed album. So I do think Seven Churches is a stronger album. I'm gonna go with Possessed Seven Churches. All right, this is working the way I hoped it would work. Bolt Thrower, Realm of Chaos versus Deicide Legion. Don't know what years these albums came out. I'm not a Bolt Thrower fan. I'm not a huge Deicide fan, but I do like Legion. I'm gonna choose Legion over Realm of Chaos. Morbid Angel, Authors of Madness versus Obituary, Slowly We Rot. These are debut albums from both bands. I believe they're both based out of Tampa, Florida. I'm not an Obituary fan. I do like Morbid Angel. Authors of Madness is my favorite Morbid Angel album, and it's not even close. Not an Obituary fan. Slowly We Rot is not my favorite Obituary album if I had to pick one. Obvious choice for me, Morbid Angel, Authors of Madness. Next up is Bolt Thrower, Those Once Loyal versus Vader's Litany, I believe. I've never listened to that Vader album. I've only listened to a couple of Vader tracks. I don't recall liking the vocal approach very much, so I never went back. I plan on going back, of course, but I never have really thoroughly listened to Vader. I have heard that Bolt Thrower album. I've tried to give Bolt Thrower. I've listened to the Bolt Thrower catalog multiple times, trying to find something about it that I liked. At one point, I liked. I think it was called the Fourth Crusade for a while, but it's not really a band I'm a big fan of. But I am gonna have to choose Bolt Thrower because I've heard that album. So by default, those once loyal. Okay, Carcass's Heartwork, 1993, I believe, melodic death metal masterpiece. It looks like Dawn of Possession, but I don't think it actually says Dawn of Possession. I don't know what this Dawn of, I don't know what that says. Never even seen that album art, so I've never listened to it, obviously. Carcass Heartwork is an album that I love, so I would choose that over of many other albums. And so considering I've never even heard the other album, I gotta go with Carcass Heartwork. Autopsy, Mental Funeral. So I had to pause my video. So Autopsy, Mental Funeral versus Bloodbaths, Nightmares Made Flesh. I've never heard that Bloodbath album. I'm not a huge Bloodbath fan. Can't say I really like any of their albums. I do like Autopsy, so I gotta go with Mental Funeral. At the Gates, At War with Reality versus Carcass's Surgical Steel. Okay. I think I've heard that At the Gates album. I know I've heard that Carcass album because I like it and I own it. Surgical Steel is I like that better than Torn Arteries, but I don't like it better than Necroticism or Symphonies or Heartwork. At the Gates, I'm not a fan of at all. I don't know. Again, I have heard that album. I believe if that's the one from 2014. Of course, got to go with Carcass again. Carcass has won twice so far. Okay. Unfair matchup. Behemoth, the Satanist, versus Amon Amarth with Odin on our side. This is my favorite Behemoth album. It's one of my favorite albums in general. Love it. I think it was 2012, 2014, 2012. Not sure on the exact year. Don't know the year for Amon Amarth. I have heard all of the Amon Amarth albums. Don't really like any of them, particularly their newer stuff. It's definitely stadium death metal. Catchy, hooky at times, but super plastic sounding at this point. Uh, this is a no-brainer. This is going to be a tough album to beat no matter what. This is Behemoths, the Satanist. Also, it's a black metal album. So I almost want to not choose it because it shouldn't be here now that I think about it. Well, what am I going to do here? I'm going to choose it because some people would consider it death metal, I guess. Okay. Now this is the matchup for me. Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten versus Immolation, Close to a World Below. Effigy of the Forgotten, the debut album from Suffocation. Immolation, this is their hit. This is it. This is their fourth album. Big fan of both of these. Suffocation was around, I think, in 1988. This is Immolation album is the year 2000. Okay, so here's how I have to do this when it comes to two bands I like. I have to basically think of if I were to get rid of if I'm going to choose Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten here, that means I can no longer listen to Close to World Below, but I have all the other Immolation albums. You know what I'm trying to do there? Kind of like a Keep or Reap that draws that Metallurgy does sometimes whenever they compare albums. So Close to World Below is my favorite Immolation album, but I love all of their albums. Effigy of the Forgotten is not my favorite Suffocation album, but it is up there. Close to or Below is one of my favorite death metal albums of all time. Gotta go with it. Entombed's Wolverine Blues, and that looks like a Dismember album that I've never heard. I remember seeing that. I remember seeing that. Either their albums are either all now on Spotify or I don't know how I've seen that, but haven't listened to it. Don't like Wolverine Blues very much. I can start it, I can enjoy it. I can't usually finish that album. Never heard Dismember. I mean that's not true. I never heard that Dismember album. So I guess I have to choose Entombed Wolverine Blues since I've heard it and it's decent. Although I almost predict that I would like that Dismember album more. Huh. I'm gonna go with Entombed. I've heard it before. At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul versus Children of Bodom, Hate Crew, Death Roll. I've never heard really any Children of Bodom. I don't think that's entirely true, but I probably heard them 10, 12, 15 years ago and it didn't register for me. I know the guitar work is impressive apparently. Don't like At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul very much, but I have heard it. I would choose Children of Bodom because I never heard it. And in this case, if I were to listen to one of these right now, I want to listen to Children of Bodom because I've never heard it, and I'm not a fan of Slaughter of the Soul. So hey, all the rules are out the window. This is just for fun. Children of Bodom, let's go. Edge of Sanity versus Soilwork. Had to pause my video for a minute. Edge of Sanity versus Soilwork. Can't read what album that Soilwork album is. Okay, I've never listened to these albums before. I know Edge of Sanity a little bit. I don't like Soilwork. And now I have to do that same thing. If I were to listen to either one of these albums right now, I would want to go for Edge of Sanity. Let's do it. Next up is Mithras with On Strange Loops versus Demolik with Nesbeth. I love that Demolik album. I think I've listened to some of that Mithras album. I had it on headphones one day when I was cleaning. Recommendation. Then I had family come over, so I couldn't finish it. That's my memory. Love me some Demolik. Love me some Nesbeth. Let's go for that finish nastiness. Cryptopsy, None So Vile versus Cryptopsy, Blasphemy Made Flesh. So, Blasphemy Made Flesh is the debut album. Is that true? I think it's true. None So Vile came after Blasphemy Made Flesh. I know that's true. I own None So Vile. I don't own Blasphemy Made Flesh. I listen to None So Vile more, but Blasphemy Made Flesh is a great album. I actually can anticipate me maybe choosing that if I keep listening to it, because I remember from my few listens that I was like, wow, that's just as good as None So Vile. But I have to go with None So Vile. Cool matchup. Necrophagus, forgot the album title, versus Decapitated's Winds of Creation. I've heard these both. I don't go back to either of them very often. On principle, I'm going with Necrophagus. Okay. Now this is Dismember, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream versus Entomb's Left Hand Path. Two Swedish giants. I think, unless Dismember's finish. Again, I'm gonna go with it. I like both these albums. I like an Ever-Flowing Stream more. Let's go with Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. Sorry, Left Hand Path fanboys. Okay, second round. Heavyweights. Possessed Seven Churches versus Deicide Legion. Seven Churches. One of my top 50 extreme music albums of all time right there. Possessed Seven Churches. Authors of Madness versus Those Once Loyal. Authors of Madness is my obvious choice because I'm not a Bolt Thrower fan. Heartwork versus Mental Funeral. Gotta go with Carcass Heartwork. Surgical Steel versus The Satanist, even though The Satanist is a freaking black metal album. Yeah, it's black metal. I gotta go with it. It's too freaking good. So going with it. All right. Close to a World Below versus Entombs. Immolation, Close to a World Below versus Entombed Wolverine Blues. Considering I don't even like that Entombed album very much, and I love Close to a World Below. Immolation. The Goats. Speaking of Goats, speaking of Immolation, I seen them live recently for the first time, and they were amazing. They were amazing. Children of Bodom versus Edge of Sanity, album versus album that I've never heard before. So again, if somebody were to hand me these two albums right now and say, listen to one of these, which one would you want to listen to? It's going to be Edge of Sanity all the way. Brutal classics here. Adremelik Nesbeth versus Cryptopsy, None So Vile. These are two albums that showcase how heavy and brutal death metal already was by 1993. That's what these bands show me. Love these albums. Something so special about Demolik and Nesbeth, the Finnish maniacs. Let's go with that. Necrophagus versus Dismember, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. I never revisit Necrophagus. I often revisit Dismember like an ever-flowing stream. That's my choice. Okay, next. This is the next round. Seven Churches versus Altars of Madness. Uh, I don't even own Seven Churches on physical media, which I need to ameliorate that pain. Uh, Altars of Madness, I know and love. This is tough. I think Possess Seven Churches is a better album. Wow. Yeah, I'm going with it. Carcass Heartwork versus Behemoth the Satanist. Okay. Hmm. Trying to think about the listening experience here. So the Satanist is my favorite Behemoth album. If I didn't have it, uh, I like a lot of their other stuff, but if I didn't have it, I would go listen to Behemoth a lot less often. If I didn't have Heartwork, I listened to Necroticism. That's my favorite Carcass work. I'd listen to their demos. I'd listen to symphonies. I'd listen to Surgical Steel. Hmm. What holds up better? They both hold up quite well. No one does melodic death metal like Carcass. Plenty of bands do what Behemoth do, actually. Um, yeah, this is really tough. Man, I'm gonna go with Carcass Heartwork. I didn't think that was gonna happen. Immolation Close to a World Below versus Edge of Sanity. Again, never heard Edge of Sanity album. Love Close to a World Below. Let's keep that blasphemy alive. Demolik, I keep forgetting their name every time I see it. Demolik Nesbit versus Dismember like an ever-flowing stream. This is a tough matchup for a lot of people. Actually, I would presume feeling weird. I love the weird. I love the dark. I love the unique. I love the insane guitar riffs that are sprawling and spider webby and nasty. Nesbit, let's keep going, Nesbit. All right. Possess Seven Churches versus Carcass Heartwork. I would need to listen to both of these albums back to back to really go, oh my God, if I'm only gonna have one. But in this case, Seven Churches is my favorite Possessed album. Heartwork, I would have other Carcass albums to listen to, like I said. Hmm. Yep. Wow. Man, Seven Churches just is blowing my mind right now. Maybe because I just haven't heard it recently as often as Heartwork. Possess Seven Churches is my choice. Wow. Surprising myself. These are my opinions. Imagine that feeling. Immolation Close to World Below versus Demolik Nesbit. Holy crap. This is I guess this is a final four matchup, whatever. This might be eight at this point. I don't know right now. Heavyweights. Immolation Close to World Below is a 10 out of 10. Demolik is pretty close to a 10 out of 10. Close to a World Below. Perfection. Immolation keeps moving on. All right. This might be the final four. So this is the final matchup to see who reaches the championship from this side of the bracket. Seven Churches, Close to or Below, Legends, OGs, Goats. I'm speaking of Immolation, of course. Close to or Below, you are close to being crowned. You're at least crowned from your side of the conference. Let's do it, Immolation. All right. Next up, this is the other side of the bracket, it looks like. Cattle Decapitations, Death Atlas versus Rivers of Nile, Where Owls Know My Name. I do not like Rivers of Nile. I don't like that album. Cattle Decapitation, I'm not really a fan of. Don't like Death Atlas very much, but I would choose to listen to that Any day over Rivers of Nile. So cattle decap. You're moving on for now. Okay, that is horrendous. I think the album's called The Idol versus Blood Incantation, Hidden History of the Human Race. Blood Incantation was also at that concert that I went to, so it was Blood Incantation, Immolation, and Obituary. Blood Incantation were also amazing. They were precise and technically perfect, and I don't see how that's possible, and they did it perfectly. Blood Incantation is the real deal. One of the modern greats for sure. Horrendous also are in that category. As far as an album, I just recently went through the Horrendous catalog. I've known about them for a while. When I first went through them, wasn't really into them that much. Now I appreciate their style, their blend of old school and progressiveness more. Blood Incantation, that actually wasn't my favorite Blood Incantation album either. It's not. Star Spawn is my favorite. Uh, but I do love that Blood Incantation album. I'm gonna have to go with Blood Incantation here. All right. Immolation, Dawn of Possession, their debut album. Deicide self-titled. I think that's a Deicide. I think that's Deicide's debut as well. Again, I'm not a huge Deicide fan, so I'm not quite sure on the chronology there, but I think so. Either way, I gotta go with one of my favorites of all time, Immolation, Dawn of Possession. Okay, two Pestilence albums, Consuming Impulse versus Testimony of the Ancients. Man, Pestilence Consuming Impulse is an underrated. I would say it's both properly rated and underrated at the same time. Testimony of the Ancients is actually probably the first Pestilence album that I listened to. I like its progressive. I like the guitar tone. I like how progressive it is. I like the instrumentals between each track. But for sheer like just you know jam-packed death metal experience, gotta go with Consuming Impulse here. Vital Remains, don't know what that album's called, versus The Crown's Death Race King. I haven't heard that entire Crown album. I have a friend, my friend Sean really likes it. I, I don't know if I've heard that Vital Remains album. Remembering my experience from both of them though, I gotta go with Vital Remains. Cynic's Focus versus Niall's debut album. Big Niall fan. Niall, gotta go with Niall here. Don't know that album title right now, which is unfortunate because I feel like the album's gonna keep going on. Uh, maybe I'll look it up. Two Opeth albums, and Opeth is a band that I am not into at all. I do think their first two albums are their best albums, but I don't like Opeth. I never revisit. I don't plan on listening to them in the future. So whichever one is the oldest one here is what I would go with, though. Um, I will actually look this up as well because I definitely want to make sure I choose the um, earliest Opeth album here out of all these choices. Which of course I can't really see. That's Deliverance. Okay, My Arms, Your Hearse is my choice. Again, two Opeth albums, Blackwater Park versus Still Life. I guess I gotta go with Still Life because it was before Blackwater Park, which is an album I can't stand. Uh, yeah, nothing about Opeth hits me the way that Opeth hits some other people apparently. But Still Life it is. No more Opeth, please. All right, this is more like it. Cannibal Corpse, Tomb of the Mutilated versus Cannibal Corpse, Vile. You got Chris Barnes era. You got the first Corpse Grinder album. Uh, you know, Cannibal Corpse for me is Corpse Grinder. Um, I've been meaning to revisit the Chris Barnes era because this is a band in general that I didn't really get into until very recently. Vile is my least favorite Corpse Grinder album, though. I'm gonna go with it on a principle as well, Cannibal Corpse Vile. Severed Survival by Autopsy versus Obituary Cause of Death. Cause of Death is my favorite Obituary album, even though it's not a favorite in terms of um it's still a 7 out of 10 in my opinion. Severed Survival is an amazing Autopsy album. Gotta go with it. Septic Flesh, Communion versus Insomnium, One for Sorrow, I believe. Don't know either of these albums. If I had to guess, I think Septic Flesh is like a symphonic death metal band. Insomnium is probably Death Doom. Man, I don't know. I don't have a clue. Probably, even though on paper I'm gonna say, I bet I would like Insomnium more. But like as far as the album covers go, and like if I just kind of want a crazy listening experience, probably Septic Flesh. I've heard neither of these, so right now, if I had to choose out of these two, I want to listen to Septic Flesh. In Flames Colony versus Dark Tranquillity Character. I've never heard that Dark Tranquillity album. I like Colony. Um, Probably won't revisit it very much ever in my life though. At this point, I'm not a big In Flames fan at all. Colony's okay. Never heard Character. Got to choose Colony in this case because I do think Colony's an okay album at least. Ulcerate Everything is Fire. Gorguts. Obscura. Okay. I know Gorguts are the OGs here, but Ulcerate is one of my favorite bands. Period. Ulcerate Everything is Fire is my choice. Obscura with Cosmogenesis versus I don't know what that album is at all. Maybe I will use the Google Lens to see what that album is if it works. So Obscura, I think I listened to that when it came out. I think I listened to that when it came out. I might like it more now than I did then. Technical death metal, I believe. Let's see what this album is if Google Lens actually works. Let's see. Taking a screenshot of taking a Google Lens photo of it. This is Chornobog with a self-titled album. Wow, never heard of that one. I think I have seen it before going around the album cover. So by default, Obscura, but I want to check out Chornobog. That is new to me. Idle Decapitation, Monolith of Inhumanity, I believe that's called. Dying Fetus Reigns Supreme. Indeed, Dying Fetus reigns supreme over Cattle Decapitation. Another horrendous album versus that says Dawn of Possession, I believe, in Curso. Haven't heard that album. Got to go with horrendous. Excited for the new album coming out. Okay, the second round here: Cattle Decapitation, Death Atlas, Blood Incantation, Hidden History of the Human Race. Got to go with Blood Incantation for my taste. Dawn of Possession versus Consuming Impulse. That's really tough. Tough one. Immolation. Immolation might go against Immolation here. This looks like this is crazy. Final Remains versus Nile. Gotta go with Nile by default. I've heard it. I like it. Let's go. Ah, my arms, your hearse. Get out of here. Yeah, your arms, my hearse. Cannibal Corpse Vile versus Autopsy Severed Survival. Gotta go with Autopsy here. Septic Flesh versus Colony. Gotta go with Colony. Ulcerate versus Obscura. Gotta go with Ulcerate. Dying Fetus Reigns Supreme versus Horrendous. Forgot what that Horrendous album is called. This is actually tough. I would need to re-listen to Reign Supreme, but I'm gonna go with Horrendous right now. Okay, back up top. Hidden History of the Human Race versus Dawn of Possession. Man. I think Dawn of Possession has more to chew over. More to chew over, more songs, more lyrical content. It's at a cool place in the history of Immolation where they haven't quite mastered their sound yet. It's their debut album. Ross isn't as guttural. it's a great album though. Probably give it a 9 out of 10. I give Blood Incantation also close to a 9 out of 10. I might have to go with Immolation again. Here we go. Nile versus Opeth. I love this matchup because Nile crushes them. Nile, whatever you're called. I will find out what that album's called while I do this because if it's going to be one of the last few remaining, I need to remember the title. And I'm sure this is one of those examples where you all are screaming at me because you know what the title is. Okay. Severed Survival versus Colony. Gotta go with Severed Survival. Ulcerate Everything is Fire versus this horrendous album. Come on, Ulcerate. Let's go, Ulcerate. Oof, Dawn of Possession versus Niles. Amongst the Catacombs of Nephrin Ka. Exactly. Huh. Man, wow. I'm gonna go with Nile. Amongst the Catacombs. Severed Survival versus Everything is Fire. Oof. Gotta go with Everything is Fire, Ulcerate. Nile Amongst the Catacombs versus Everything is Fire. I like two more Ulcerate albums better than this. Do I like it? I like the 2019 Nile album a lot. I'm going with Ulcerate. Okay, this is the finals. This is the finals. Immolation Close to or Below versus Ulcerate. Everything is Fire. Uh,
Recording in progress.
Had to pause the recording because another visual aid. This is my champion. Immolation Close to a World Below. Yeah, which makes sense for me because again, I like these are two of my favorite bands. Close to or Below is my favorite Immolation album. Everything is Fire is not my favorite Ulcerate album. Destroyers of All is my favorite Ulcerate album. And then the 2020 album, probably after that. Close to or Below, you are my death metal champion. I'm crowning you. I hope it's, what's the freaking crown of thorns? We're gonna place it on Jesus Together. Immolation, Close to or Below, my favorite album of this bracket fight. Yeah, that was kind of fun. Hope you enjoyed watching it or listening to it. Who would you choose here out of any of these matchups? Should I do more of these? I bet there's a black metal one, right? That's really the only one I would feel qualified to talk about out of the metal genres, subgenres. They are my two favorite. Um, yeah, so please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to stay heavy.